Okay, we are going to begin, and if there's some stragglers that come in, they will miss just the first, couple minutes probably. But I want to welcome you to our webinar. Happy Wednesday to everybody. My hope is that there's going to be some great takeaways for you on the call. I know that we're only covering a small kind of point within the sales process, but presentation is a really important aspect of it. So we'll dive into that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to *6 and ask a question, or you can use the chat box, and we'll just continue from there. So the first thing I want to cover is, what are the objectives that you're trying to accomplish when presenting? Okay, and the old days, by old days could be 10 years ago. Everything's about closing, and I agree. I mean, there's no question that getting ink on paper is critical, and we need to, get some pretty firm commitments, and checks and contracts certainly work best. But making a good presentation is a big part of what leads us to that, and what happens prior to the presentation even more so. But there's a couple of objectives that you want to make sure that you have when you're presenting. Number one is being prepared for the presentation. All right, to make sure you're covering the ground that needs to be covered. Number two is keeping the prospect comfortable. We don't want anybody upset. We don't want anything to be adversarial. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page and has the same mindset. And then last one is closing the sale before it's closed. And that is essentially knowing that it's going to close versus hoping that it's going to close. And there's a technique and some information I'm going to provide for you today to help you really understand that the deal was already closed before you even walked in the door. At that point, all you can do is screw it up because they were ready to go. They were ready to go from before you even walked in the door. So let's talk a little bit about preparing the presentation. Is your prospect ready to proceed with the presentation? How do you know if your prospect is ready to proceed with the presentation? Okay. Well, the first thing that comes to my mind of things that are important are, did you follow some specific steps leading up to this point, okay? For example, I'll just name a couple. Do you have a strong relationship with the prospective new client, okay? Did you establish an agenda in order to have a control over the meeting to make sure that both parties are agreeing that how important it is to take things forward? We don't want to go backwards. We want to always go forward. And if things aren't going forward, they're probably over. And so the agenda allows us to do that. The next step is really the critical step, and this is talking about discovery. And some of you that have been on our previous webinars know, discovery isn't just uncovering needs. Okay? It's also about taking it down to what we call CRs, which stands for compelling reasons. And that's the personal and emotional reason for someone to make a change. And so there's presentations that you can make where, they have an interest and they're interested in what you have, your solution, but maybe there's nothing compelling to get them to really want to change enough. So maybe you're saving them a little money, maybe you're giving them a few more additional, services that they're not currently getting, but it may not be something compelling. And I think we all understand that when something's personal and emotional, that's usually when we make a change. The idea that I need to lose weight is, maybe a logical type of thought. But if I come from the doctor's office and the doctor tells me, Steve, if you don't lose 15 pounds, you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to have some serious medical issue, my personal and emotional need goes up for me to make a change. And we're trying to do that with regards to our service or product to the best of our ability. I'm not suggesting it's easy to do. I'm suggesting it's important to do. Once we have discovery and we've figured out some compelling reasons, do you have a commitment that they want to solve the problems, right, that they have? If they don't have any problems that you're going to solve, what are they going to commit to? Nothing. So if someone has told you that, yeah, they're committed to solving the problems, they'd like your help, you know that they're the decision maker. Okay. You're not just dealing with a gatekeeper. There's more than one decision maker that you need to be in touch with and talk this through. That's going to be critical. And then lastly is financial. I can't tell you how many times I talk to entrepreneurs and people in a business development role that walk into a presentation with a $100,000 price tag on a solution, and the prospect had no idea that it was going to be $100,000. They thought $20,000, $25,000 tops, and you're hitting them at $100,000. Well, not knowing what their budget is, not knowing what they believe, what their belief is, what the investment's going to be, not even talking about any numbers prior to a presentation is a big mistake. So if we're doing things correctly according to our process and the things that we teach, we have a strong relationship, check. We've established an agenda at every stage to make sure that we're moving forward and we're controlling the sales process. We have compelling reasons right here that say there's a reason for them to change. There's no question that there's personal, emotional stuff happening here that they need to change. It's not just going to be a logical decision. It's not just going to be a monetary decision. They are committed. They are the decision maker, and financially they're willing and able. Okay, willing and able to make a decision, and they're going to invest X amount with you. Now, if you're saying to yourself as I go through this, I typically do not have this information before I make a presentation, that's a reason to talk further with me, or that's a reason to go out and buy some sales books or tapes or watch go to my YouTube channel, something. But there's some steps that are being skipped in your sales process that will be very detrimental to your effectiveness with your presentation, okay? So, but preparing the presentation includes something else, and there's a technique I want to walk you through that is really effective at making sure you've covered all your bases and you know exactly what to present during a presentation, okay? So think of it this way. This is preparing for the presentation before you go in. So I've met with them once, I've met with them twice, maybe I've even met with them 3 times, but before I come in with the presentation, the 1 to 10 technique is something I'm going to do to ensure that I'm not walking into a situation that isn't going to be a positive outcome. And if there's lies that are being told, and we know that buyers never lie, right? Right? Okay, we know that buyers sometimes keep the truth from us because they don't want to allow us to have an advantage, or they're not trustworthy, whatever it might be. We want to make sure that we understand the full situation. And the 1 to 10 technique really helps to pull out the lies, or it'll also pull out the commitment that indeed we are looking to move forward and give us specifics on what we should be presenting, okay? So the first thing is you have to determine or define what the 10 is for the situation and find out where the prospect is on a 1 to 10. And so, that would be, let's say, for example, I'm in a one-call close situation. I'm selling something that's $500. It shouldn't be more than a one meeting type of situation. I can say to someone, look, before I give you get into a presentation, I want to make sure I'm on the right track here. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is that you feel strongly, that with the proper solutions that you want to move forward and hire me, and a 1 is no interest at all. I'm curious to know where you are. And they're going to give you a number. It's going to be a 3, a 5, a 7, an 8, a 9, a 10. Okay, they're going to give you a number. And that number is just like when you ask your friend, on a scale of 1 to 10, what did you think of that movie? 10 is perfect, it was the best movie you ever saw, and 1 is it was terrible. And the person usually says, it was this or it was that. But you get a number out of them. And the nice thing about numbers is it's more clearly defined than, I like the movie. You like the movie. Okay, well, that's not as clear as 1 to 10. We know that a 9 is you love the movie. We know that a 7 is you probably like the movie. A 5 is you didn't care either way. A 3 is you hated it. A 1 is get me out of here. I walked out halfway through. Same thing with when you're dealing with a sales situation in a presentation situation is I want to know before I walk in with my information and my pricing and things that are going to take me time to put together. I want to know where I am at this point. So defining the 1 to 10 is important. Now, someone on this call is going to say, wait a second, you're telling me that on a first call I'm going to ask them to buy and have them give me a 1 to 10? I'm trying to explain that in a one-call close, the answer is yes. If I know that my sales cycle is 3 meetings, I'm certainly not going to do a 1 to 10, that they're going to buy from me in the first meeting. Maybe we didn't even get very far. So I might redefine the 10 as, I understand that, you're one of the decision makers, Bob, but you also mentioned that the CEO of your company, Michael, is also involved. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is you feel so strongly about, our conversations today that you'll help me set up a meeting with him to meet with Michael as well as yourself, or a 1 is that's never going to happen. Where would you say we fall? And again, I redefine the 10 as something different, and therefore it's not a pressure to close a sale, it's a pressure to take it to the next level. What's the next step that I need to take? And in this particular case, I'm going for a meeting with the other decision maker. Okay, if we go back real quick, hold on. Oh, okay, I lost my drawings. But if you remember, if we went through all those steps, the relationship, agenda, discovery, etc., we've gone through all the qualifiers that we need to understand that they're ready for a presentation. We just want to make sure we're going to present the right things to the right people. So the first step is 1 to 10 to understand what a 10 is. A 10 is a retainer, another meeting, an introduction with a decision maker. It'll be different in each situation and for each person. You just have to understand where you are and what's the next step. I'm not trying to close someone that isn't the right decision maker, because all they're going to do is take my information and they're going to destroy it and give it to their boss the wrong way. So I'd rather move it forward to not presenting, but to really meet with the main decision maker as a next step. Okay? Step number 2 is to question the prospect to find out the reasoning behind the number they just provided for you. Okay? So if I ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is you want to work with me and a 1 is that you don't, and they give me a 7, I'm going to put it back on them and say, look, Bob, a 7 is a good number. Can you explain to me why you're saying a 7? And my hope is that Bob's going to say, well, you're likable, you seem to be an expert, you came highly recommended, our meeting so far has been, terrific, I'm excited about the proposition of working together. On the other hand, what happens if he says, I'm a 3? At that point, I may want to say, I'm a little confused. Here you've shared with me all these problems that were, emotional and personal to you, and you're saying that when it comes to, working with me and committing to solving problems, you're a 3. Can you help me out here? And let the person scramble, and then what's going to come out, here's what will come out. Well, the truth is, Steve, and then boom. The truth is, Steve, and then they're going to hit me with the objection, or they're going to hit me with the fact that they don't have any money, the fact that they're not the real decision maker, the fact that they need to start this in 6 months, not next week. Whatever it might be, there's a reason that their number is so low. Maybe I find out that where they weren't looking at different coaches, now they're looking at different coaches. So things have changed. So that's why it's important to understand their number and ask them, why did you choose that number? Okay? Then we go to find out how to move the prospect to a 10. So this is asking things about, what do you need to see, hear, or experience to be a 10, or to move to closer to a 10? So if they give me a 7, what I'm really trying to do is I'm trying to figure out what the gap is between 7 and 10. Okay? So here's 10, here's 1, there is 7. There's a gap here. This gap, we need this gap defined. Because what's going to end up happening is this gap is going to end up becoming my presentation. So that may seem strange, but that's the truth. So for example, I ask somebody on a scale of 1 to 10, working with me is a 10, 7 or 1 is no interest, and they tell me they're a 7, and then I ask them what do they need to see, hear, or experience, and they say, honestly, Steve, the only thing is I'd like to speak with a couple of your references. I really would like to talk with some people that have been where I'm looking to go. I want to find out what the good things were, what the bad things were. I really need to kind of figure that out. Okay. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to move them from a 7 to a 10. I would say anything else? They go, no, that's pretty much it. I'm going to then move them from a 7 to a 10. That's step 4. You've got to track the prospect to a 10 and not give up before you get to a 10. So after learning the prospect's number, reason, you want to address that reason until the prospect's a 10. So what I would say is, so Bob, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that you want to speak with some references. I can give you 2 references that I think will really be good for you to talk to. You can ask them tough questions. You can ask them about ROI. They're in the similar field to you. So that I think would be helpful. But I'm curious to know, Bob, once you've spoken to the references and they exceed your expectations with regards to what they're going to tell you about our program, about what we did for them, the return on investment, everything else, where would you be then? Now, Bob is going to say one of two things. Bob is going to say, well, then I'm a 10. Let's do it. Let's move forward. What is my presentation at that point? My presentation is nothing. They wrote the presentation for me when they told me that they wanted to. Now I still have to produce numbers, and I have to produce, the numbers that we spoke about. I have to kind of outline what the program is. They don't care about that. That's not their top priority. That's not a big part of the presentation. That's just an afterthought at this point. What this person really wants is they want to know that they can speak with two of my former clients, and that's what they need to see, hear, experience to be a 10. And a 10 is defined as we're doing business. Now, let's say I say the same thing, and I say, I've got two good references for you. After you speak with them, if they exceed your expectations, where would you be then? The person says, well, then I'd be an 8. So what I did was I moved them from a 7 to an 8, but there's still the gap, right? What's the gap? 8 to 10. So I would say, all right, Bob, I appreciate that, but there's still this gap between an 8 and a 10, and I'm just concerned that I'm missing something. Can you help me out here? And this is, again, when the truth is going to come out. Well, after I get all your information, Steve, I still need to bring it to the board. Now, here's an interesting thing. This board that they're speaking about, guess what's never come up the entire time we've been talking? Even when I asked direct questions about their decision-making process, the board never came up. Now I'm hearing that the board is involved. So now I have to change gears, and I have to try to figure out how to get in front of the board. I have to coach him up so that he can be successful in front of the board. I want to understand, is the board a rubber stamp based on your feeling about this program? I need to understand the details, okay? So when we do this all together, here's what it sounds like. Ben, are you on the call, Ben Wilner? If you're on the call, hit *6. Do a little role play with me.
I'm here.
Hey, Ben, how are you?
Great, Steve.
Okay. Everybody, Ben Wilner is a expert witness testimony individual with Grant Thornton. He's a former client of mine. I think we just wrapped up about a month ago, right, Ben?
Yep.
Okay. I was hoping you could just role play through with me the 1 to 10, and you don't have to be too nice to me, but don't be too mean either.
All right.
Is that okay? All right. So again, imagining that we've been through all of the steps I mentioned a couple slides ago, and now we're about ready to present, and I'm going to run Ben through the 1 to 10 so you can hear how it sounds. Again, using softening statements, a soft tone of voice, nurturing tone of voice. This is not something that can be done in a haphazard fashion. What ends up happening is you become a combination of my cousin Vinny and a car salesman. Hey, what do I got to do to get you to a 10? Hey, if you're doing a 1 to 10 technique without softening it up and without using some of the verbiage that I'm suggesting here, it's probably going to come across a little aggressive or a little funny. So we're not trying to do that. What we're trying to do is we're trying to have the prospect help us write the presentation by helping us better understand what the gaps are between where they are and what a 10 is. All right, so let's jump in. So, Ben, this has been, you've shared a lot of information with me. I think we're both on the same page as far as an interest in moving forward. I want to come back and make a presentation. I just have one more question for you before I take off today. Is that okay?
That's fine.
Okay, great. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being that you feel very strongly that you want to work with me and that you feel I'm the right person and we should move forward and get a contract signed and take next steps. And a 1 is that you really have no interest whatsoever in anything I've been talking about for the last couple of days. Where would you say you fall?
Probably about a 7.
About a 7. Okay, terrific. Let me just ask you though, why a 7? What's happening in your mind that you could share with me?
Sure. Well, it's everything what you say sounds great, but if I could kind of see it in action, you say that there are classes, and it's hard for me to imagine what those classes are like.
Okay. So that's certainly something that we can talk about. Is there anything else that is kind of holding you back from being closer to a 10?
It's probably just sleeping on it.
Just sleeping on it. Okay. So let me ask you this: if we were in a situation where I invited you to come to a class, and in that class you're able to really not just visualize it, but actually be there, learning some lessons, talking with my clients that are in the classroom, hearing their success stories and some of the things that they're saying. That evening you sleep on it, and then the next day you and I have a very, kind of specific conversation about next steps. And you're thrilled with the class, and your sleep wasn't interrupted. At that point, where would we be on that 1 to 10 scale?
We'd probably be a 10.
Probably be a 10, or we would be a 10?
You'd be a 10.
We'd be a 10. Okay. Well, listen, that's great, because that means that we could really take next steps forward and look to work together. Obviously, I want you to have a good experience in the class, and I want to make sure that your concerns are addressed. And I think that sitting through a class would be a great way for you to understand if this is really for you. So why don't we schedule that, and then we can go from there.
Sounds great.
Okay. Ben, since I have you on the call, anything you want to share with the group that you just went through our program that you just want to share as far as, have you used the 1 to 10? Have you been, following the process, and maybe just share with them something or two about the program?
Sure. Well, it's as you mentioned, that going and the more what you can set up before the presentation, the better the presentation becomes, because you're really kind of shooting in the dark as to kind of what you think are the important issues that the client has. But if you can go through the steps and really kind of walk them through and find out what they're thinking and what their compelling reasons are, I think the better and more effective you can be presenting, and the better close ratios you'd have. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you, Ben. I appreciate your being my assistant here for the 1 to 10 technique. Hopefully everybody had it. Are there any questions about this technique and how it's used and how it helps us to really define the presentation, so we're not walking into, like Ben said, something that isn't real specific? I mean, I can come in and present a million things, but if all the person really needs to see, hear, or experience is 1 or 2 things in order to move forward, why am I over-presenting, which is a problem that people have. I've gotten 50, 60-page proposals before. I don't know that I'm going to be reading a 50 or 60-page proposal anytime soon. Usually I just read the first paragraph and I read the price on page 61. So we really need to make sure that this is done face-to-face and that we know exactly what to present. All right, so if that's the case... one thing which I'll add is that sure. As I went through and I actually had to give a proposal probably about a week ago, and the client called me and said, hey, can you give a proposal? I kind of thought about it for a week, how I really wanted to go and do the presentation, and I called the client back and I said, well, I have a couple questions for you. And at first she was really taken aback by saying, what, you have more questions? I thought we covered everything. But we went and we had a great 45-minute conversation, just really digging into a lot of the details, and it really streamlined what the proposal was, and it became a 10-page proposal as opposed to a 31-page presentation that I was going to give. That's terrific. So, again, even though we're not talking specifically about the 1 to 10, the fact that you recognized that you didn't have enough information to be clear about what you needed to present, to go back and ask some additional questions, and that's just, and again, I think that separates you too from if there are any other competitors that, wow, this person actually took the time to call and ask more questions. They're not just going to come in like a bull in a china shop. They're really specifically looking to answer our questions and solve our problems based on a good proposal that's focused. So that's perfect. Thank you, Ben. I really appreciate that extra story too. It was good. Sure. Very helpful. Okay, so moving on, we have the 1 to 10 technique done. One of the other things we want to look at is we want to make sure we keep the prospect comfortable. Okay? Why do we want to keep them comfortable? Because we want to make sure that they're not feeling sold to. We want to make sure that they're feeling like this is cooperative. And so we want to be aware of the prospect's speech.
We want to listen to the words they're using. We want to listen to their tone of voice. I was in a meeting last week, and I could tell that the person I was talking to was having a bad day, or there's something wasn't right. And so I had to just back away and really just let them vent a little bit and just take it all in, as opposed to maybe being pitchy or getting into some additional areas without making sure that everything was okay. So I'm listening for speech and tone of voice, and I'm watching body language. Is their body language closed, like this, or are they open, and they're leaning forward? I love when I see elbows on the table. That shows me a real interest in what I'm saying. And so really make sure the prospect is comfortable. And when you see that they're not comfortable, you may want to stop and address it. There's a kind of a psychology of this that I'll break down into the simplest terms possible. Okay, not okay. Okay means that the prospect is fine. I mean, they're comfortable, they're excited, they're happy. But if you can observe through body language, tone of voice, and speech that someone is not okay, diving into your presentation and just digging through it may not be the best approach. You may want to address that they may not seem okay and understand why they're not okay, and then address it and see if you can overcome it prior to the presentation. Otherwise, you're going to have somebody that's not listening. They're reading ahead of, when you give them a handout, they're reading ahead, and there's a problem, okay? So we want to try to address why they're not okay if you're observing some things. And, again, you have to be very soft in how you bring that up. Listen, Bob, I'm just picking up a vibe, or I'm picking up a concern that, there may be some things that we haven't answered, or that you're still uncomfortable with what we've gone through so far. Can you help me out here? And hopefully the person will be open and honest and say, Steve, I'm glad you brought that up. To be honest, I'm really concerned about the money. I know that this is something we need to do. I know this is something that you're the right person for us. There's no question. But it's just the money issue. I'm really struggling with how we're going to put it together. And what I can say is something to just calm them and say, look, it may not be the right time. And, if I can do anything in my power to make sure that the money works for you, I'm going to do it. So let's just take money off the table for a couple minutes. Let's make sure that the program is right. Let's make sure you're comfortable with everything. And then I'll do whatever I can to make sure that we work out the money as a win-win situation. Is that okay? And the guy goes, you know what, Steve, I really appreciate that. That's really meaningful to me. And then after we figure everything out, I can bring the money back in and really try to work out a win-win. And sometimes I have to pull some things away to lower the fee. They don't get the Cadillac or the Lexus when they're trying to pay, Chevy money or Ford money. So, we've got to sometimes take some features away, and that's okay. That's just the way it may have to be. Okay? But we want to make sure the prospect is comfortable is the main point here. Okay? Part of that is also negotiating. We may be in a situation where we need to negotiate. And I want to just take a couple minutes and talk about negotiation. I'm not saying I'm a professional negotiator like you might find out there, but I have experienced, obviously, a lot of negotiating myself. I've read a lot on the subject. I've been teaching it for years. And there's 3 types of negotiations, and one is the worst, and 2 are pretty good. And I just want to make sure that you understand where you really are in the process of negotiating. The first kind of negotiation is a competitive type of negotiation, okay? And this is really a win-lose situation. Either the prospect wins because they negotiate a great deal and you lose your margin, or you win and the prospect overpays and ends up becoming unhappy about the situation or unhappy about the decision. It's usually a win-lose in a competitive because we're being competitive. I mean, think about it. You're running a race. Someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. Okay? In this situation, when it's competitive, it's usually because there's a lack of relationship. There's a lack of relationship. Okay? They don't care about you. They just want the best price, and it's a commodity, and you haven't done a very good job of building any kind of relationship or value. It's really more of a transactional type of thing. If I'm buying car insurance, right, it might be transactional. Well, that's because the person that was selling me the car insurance didn't develop enough value or enough relationship with me. So, yeah, it's going to be a transactional. It's going to be just based on $100 less than someone else, okay? So that's one way of negotiation is competitive. The next one is cooperative, and the one after that is collaborative. Okay, cooperative is definitely going to be more of a win-win, and a collaborative is a win together. And what I mean by that is cooperative is, I'll give you a little etching. So here's competitive. I'm sitting here across a table from the person. This is the buyer. I'm the seller. We're sitting across a table, banging our fists, trying to get what we want. Okay? We go to cooperative, and here we've got me sitting here as a seller, and the buyer is sitting here. Now we're not across the table. We're not banging our fists. We're trying to cooperatively figure out how to work together. Collaborative is the best, and that's where me as the seller and the buyer are actually sitting on the same side of the table trying to figure out how we're going to work together. And I just was working with an organization where this is exactly what happened. Okay, we were able to work out the solutions, we were able to work out the money, we were able to work out the terms in such a way that it was like it's like I was already a part of the team. I was already a part of their organization at that point. And we didn't have to negotiate. We didn't have to bang our fists on the table. I didn't have to take my pricing down. I didn't have to pull anything out of the proposal. Everything was perfect because the relationship was there. My understanding of their organization was at a very high level. Their feeling about me and my solutions was at a very high level. And so this is the way to do business if you can. And I'm not suggesting it's easy. I'm just suggesting it's the right way to go if you can pull it off. But we try to get someone to go from competitive to cooperative to hopefully to collaborative. If you're at this level, and this is where most of your business is coming from, you're working too hard. You're working too hard for too little. We need to get people into a cooperative and collaborative state in order to effectively negotiate. Okay? Negotiation techniques. Let's spend a couple minutes just talking about some negotiating techniques. Okay? Number one is early exclusion. And it's identifying early in the process what's not negotiable for you or for the prospect. So if I have a program that meets on Tuesday mornings and the prospect says Tuesday mornings is the only morning I can't meet, that's something that we're done at that point. It's not even excluded. We're out. If it's something that is a price point. I just spoke to a lovely young lady on the phone today, and when I went over and talked to her about what our program was, we immediately figured out it wasn't a fit, it wasn't what her needs were, it wasn't what she was looking for, and we immediately ended the conversation as friends and moved on. So early exclusion is a way to figure out if things aren't going to work out early on, let's not waste each other's time. What's negotiable and what's not negotiable? Another one is defer the issue. So like I mentioned earlier, we're negotiating, we're working through it, but it's coming down to price. What I might do is I might say, let's defer the price for now. Let's just forget about it for a few minutes. Let's figure out everything else, and then I can bring it back in. Okay? A test demand. Use the 1 to 10 technique that we spoke about earlier, and try to figure out issues that are important or issues that are not important. So they might say, Steve, a big issue for me is, I'd like to talk to some clients to get some validation. Well, I appreciate that, and I can certainly do that. My clients are very busy. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 is that's critical for you, and a 1 is it's not important at all. Where would you say that falls? And they say, well, it's like a 10. Well, all right, let's make sure that happens. If they say, well, it's like a 1 or 2, it's something I was just thinking about. All right, well, maybe that might just be put on the back burner. There's other more important things that we need to talk about. Okay? I'm moving through these fairly quickly, but I want to make sure we get to everything. Another important negotiation technique is having a good rationale for whether or not you're going to concede on something or not, and to justify, meeting or not meeting their demand. If the person's asking me to reduce my fees by 20%, okay, I need to hear some good justification. And if I tell them that my fees are this price and they're not going to change, I need to make sure I give them a good justification for why I'm not willing to lower my numbers, okay? And so we have to have a good rationale for that in order to be effective in negotiating. A counter demand, this is big. Some people, so I hear a good example. I'm I have an association that I belonged to last year. My association membership has expired. They call me back, and they're saying, Mr. Fretzin, we'd like you to come back and resubscribe. And I tell them that I'm not going to. And they say, well, Mr. Fretzin, what if we were to offer you a 25% discount on this if you sign up today? And I said, I got very little value out of the association. They didn't follow through on the things that they had said. It's probably just not a fit. Mr. Fretzin, I get that. We really want you to be a part of this. What if we were able to give you a 50% discount on your membership this year? At this point, I'm saying this is ridiculous. I mean, are they going to pay me to join the association? Is that the direction we're going? They're losing all credibility and they're losing all value. And and that was I saw no value when I was a member. Now I understand that the sales professional here doesn't see any value either. He's just caught his price in half. The problem is that when you're taking something away, when you're giving up something, you have to get something in return. So I just worked out an agreement with an organization where I lowered my fees by 25%. In return, I'm going to take a percentage of the difference between the sales that they did last year or their projections and what they're going to do under my tutelage, under my coaching, okay? So the downside for me is 25%. The upside for me could be, unlimited. There's no cap. So if I can get them to 100% doubling their sales, I'm going to get a significant bonus. Even if I just raise them up 30%, I'm going to get a significant bonus. So that was my counter demand. If I give you 25% lower fee, but I want back-end money, I see potential in being a partner with your company, I'm willing to do that. Counter demands are critical. The last thing I want to bring up is called bracketing. You're looking for a budget. This is to get understanding of budgets, okay? If they're not willing to give you budgets, if they're not sharing information with you, what you may want to do is you may want to give them a high and low number range to gauge, what they're willing and able to invest. Again, if I walk in with a $100,000 proposal and their budget is $25,000, that's a problem. So I want to understand their numbers too, and bracketing sometimes will allow us to do that. Okay, giving a high and low range of what the numbers might be. Okay, some tips on presentation. Focus on the prospect's key issues. Okay, you don't need to sell everything. You don't need to present everything. You just need to find out what are the 2 or 3 things that are really critical for them to see, hear, or experience. S-H or E, see, hear, or experience, and that's your presentation. Granted, there might be, some fine print. There might be an outlay of the program, what the actual service offering might be, what the product might be. But as far as what do they need to actually lock up the deal, it's usually 2 or 3 things. Okay? Use the prospect's own words. If they told you that they're drowning in quicksand and they feel like the clock is ticking and they're drowning in quicksand, things like that, you can say, repeat back before you do a presentation, what are their issues? I do this on a regular basis. Before I do a presentation, I feed them back the issues. This is what you told me. And I'm not using my words, I'm using their words, their own words. Okay? And it's not pushing them in their face. It's showing that I'm a good listener, and it's letting them recognize when they say it, they own it. And I hope you heard what I just said. That's really critical. When they say it, they own it. So I like to take a lot of notes when I'm in a meeting because I'll write down some key words that they say, and then when I feed them back, they go, yeah, I did say that, and that is the truth. That is what's going on here, versus me trying to recap or figure out or condense what they're saying. It's not as powerful. Okay, another one here is to prioritize the issues based on the prospect's order of importance. So based on Ben's role play with me, I'll elaborate a little bit. But let's say number 1 is he needs to attend a class. Number 2 is he wants to work out terms with me. He wants to make sure that the terms are fair for both parties. Okay? And number 3 is he needs to sleep. So I would ask him, based on, what you're looking to see or experience, give me a priority of the things that you mentioned that you want to attend a class, you want to make sure the terms are fair, and you need to sleep on it. which is first, which is second, which is third. Okay. Once I have that, then I can start addressing them, and I'm not going to oversell. I'm going to avoid including more information than I need. And then the final kind of step is, okay, 1 to 10, and then here. What would you like to do next? So what I would do is I'd say, look, you've attended a class, Ben. How was the class? Ben says it was phenomenal, better than I expected. So from that standpoint of addressing that issue or concern about knowing that our classes are quality and that you're going to get great value, would you say you're 100% satisfied? He says, absolutely. Boom, check it off. We also, Ben, work through the terms. I know that you're looking for terms. We work through the terms. Do you feel that they're fair and for both parties and that we're in a good situation? He says, absolutely. I said, 100%? He goes, yes. So I'm using this 100%, again, as a way to continue to gauge commitment through the presentation. And I know that you slept on it, Ben, and then, of course, I'm hoping you got some uninterrupted sleep. Is that the case? He says, sure. Okay. Anything else that we've missed? He goes, nope. Okay. So let's walk through and go through the details, and we'll go through and we'll move forward and get you signed up. He goes, absolutely, that sounds great. So a strong closing line, okay, for me used to be some crazy, technique. Now I'm saying, what would you like me to do at this time? Would you like to sign the agreement to begin? We can get the implementation plan together. What would you like to do next? I mean, that's as aggressive as I need to be when I'm closing a sale, because quite frankly, the sale is closed before I even walked in the door to make a presentation. I know they attended my class. I know that the terms I'm going to work out are fair, and I know the person slept. Okay. Obviously, in your own business, you've got to look at, what are some of the key things that lock up deals for you, and what are the key things that your prospects need to see, hear, experience. But once you understand what they are, chances are it's the same 2 or 3 things every time, and you just need to make sure that if they're happy with those things and they feel that you've really, followed through on explaining them and going through detail, that they're happy, are they going to sign at that point? And you need them to verbalize that, yes, indeed, I want to move forward if A, B, and C align with the stars. If I'm a 10 is a yes, they're going to move forward. If you never did a 1 to 10, again, you're walking in and thinking it's a closing meeting, and it ends up becoming just another grilling session. So there's some presentation tips. One more thing I want to cover is post-sale protection. So let's say that I did get the sale. They signed up with me, or they gave me a verbal that's as good as gold in my mind. What could happen negatively that I may not be prepared for, or maybe I haven't prepared them for? Let's look at 2 possible problems that can happen. Number 1 is doubts generated by himself, meaning buyer's remorse. So someone has just agreed to come to my class, and they've invested X number of dollars to do that, and I get a call later that day saying, Steve, I know we've agreed on moving forward, but I've got a lot of things on my plate right now, and I'm thinking maybe if we could just hold off for a couple months, it would really be great. Let me translate for you on the call right now. This is a no, and this is someone that's not working with me in 2 months. Okay, hope you heard me there. This is someone who's stalling and that has tremendous buyer's remorse, and they're not going to be moving forward. They looked at their money again, realizing that if they spend it on A, they're not going to spend it on B, and there's doubts there that were not addressed early on, and there's a problem here. So that's one thing that we like to address before they leave the room. So if I'm in a position to say, other than an emergency or anything that you could think of that would stop us from moving forward at this point, Bob, are you 100% committed to this program? And Bob says, yes, I am going to be your prize student. I'm 100%. I'm excited to get started. This is life-changing for me. I'm ready to go. That's what I need to hear before he leaves my office in order to make sure that this thing is protected. So that's one issue. This other one is even more powerful, can be more powerful, and this is doubts generated by others. So negative comments made by friends, coworkers, a maven, family, another coach, you could think about it in your industry. You might be talking with the decision maker, but that decision maker may have friends that have purchased products or services somewhere else, and maybe they make a phone call and they ask, who are you using? Who are you using? Okay? So we have to be careful. Let me give a good example of this. There's a gentleman, so I'm looking at changing accounting firms, okay? and I meet with a young accountant who basically gets me to say, yeah, I'll change accounting firms. I'll go on with you. Doesn't protect me against my existing accountant. And what do you think my existing accountant is going to say or do in order to keep me where I am in working with them? Who knows? Anything and everything, right? So I call up my accountant. I say, hey, Bob. By the way, everyone's named Bob, apparently. But I say, hey, Bob, I've decided I'm going to change accounting firms. I just want to let you know. I know we've been friends a long time, and we play golf together, and but that I we've had some disagreements about your service and how we work together, and I've just gotten to a point where I'm thinking change may be a good thing. Now Rick comes back to me at, Steve, please don't go. Look, we have a long relationship. Let's figure this out. Let's work it out. Let's talk about the service. I'll drop my fees. He's going to put everything in front of me to keep me there. And I'm going to eventually say, all right, well, you know what, maybe I'll give you one more chance. Let's see how it works for the next 6 months to a year. Now I have to call back the accountant who thought I was going to work with him because I told him I was going to, and I have to explain that I've decided not to do that, not to go. Hopefully I get his voicemail so I don't actually have to talk to him. So, again, these are some things that we don't always think about, but before someone leaves my office, typically what I'm doing is I'm asking them questions about their own self-doubt, right, buyer's remorse, and I'm talking about who they might talk to. So I'd say, hey, Ben, before you, I know you're excited to work with me and everything, and we're going to move forward next week, but I know that you've got a big golf outing this weekend with your buddies. I'm curious, are you going to mention this to them, that you've made this decision to work with sales results? And he's going to say, oh, yeah, they're going to, I'm going to tell everybody. And I say, what do you think their reaction is going to be? And he'll say, I don't know. I mean, let me ask you, Ben, is it possible that some of them may feel negatively about the decision that you're making, or that they may have a suggestion about some things that you could do that aren't in line with what you and I have talked about? He says, oh, yeah, that's absolutely possible. Say, well, let me ask you this. How are you going to handle that? Let's say somebody gets really negative and says, Ben, you don't need that. You're a great salesperson. You're terrific at what you do. You're the best. And, how are you going to address that? So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that I'm protecting the verbal, or actually the signature, or whatever, the commitment, by addressing some self-doubt and buyer's remorse and some possible naysayers, right, that are out there, those naysayers, okay? So that's what this post-sale protection is. I call it the clincher, because we're clinching up the sale, and sometimes we forget, and then we end up with a bad voicemail or email, a day later, okay? Clincher questions. Doubts generated by the prospect include, are you 100% satisfied with your decision to work with us? The old methodology of sales was get the check, get the contract, get the hell out, right? Don't sit around because they'll change their mind. And you used to run out of the room with the check and the contract and get the check in before it bounces. Well, that's old school sales mentality. If you followed a good process and you built a relationship, you're there to solve problems, they're 100% committed to working with you, you addressed the possible ambushes that are laying out there for them, you don't have to run anywhere. Okay, this sale is happening, and it's not going anywhere because you've done all the right things. Okay, so asking a question like this is a good way to go. Is there anything that may come up after leaving here today that could change your mind? I mean, is there any reason that you wouldn't want to move forward and proceed? Okay, doubts generated. When you go home and your wife tells you that you're crazy for buying that service, what would you tell her? If I go home and I tell my wife I'm getting a motorcycle, what do you think my wife's going to tell me? Okay, she's going to tell me I'm nuts. You'll kill yourself. Don't do it. I'll divorce you. Okay, so if I'm at the motorcycle dealer and the guy doesn't protect me against that, and I've already made a verbal that I'm going to come back and buy this motorcycle the next day, I just got to kind of check with my wife. He doesn't really deal with it. I'm not coming back. My wife's going to beat me up, and I'm done. On the other hand, if he says, well, how are you going to handle your wife? Obviously, she's going to have some issues with this. And he tries to work me through it. Maybe it's a matter of getting my wife back to see that it's safer than she thinks. Maybe it's just giving me some coaching. Either way, I need some help here. Again, competitor. Remember the example I gave you about leaving my accountant. Okay. Remember, this is what my new accountant should say. Remember what you told me they didn't do for you. Remember how they kept you waiting, how your taxes were late every year, how they never provided you any proactive information. It was all reactive. Remember how you told me how the guy never calls you back? He waits 2-3 days to call you back. Even after you talk to him about it, he still doesn't. You know the guy's never going to change, right? And I go, yeah. Okay, so if he asks you to come back, which he might do, what are you going to say to him? And I'm going to hopefully get some positive feedback that I'm not going to go back to my accountant. The golf buddy, you're playing golf this weekend, and he told them about the service. What will they say? The clincher isn't something that's going to happen every time. It's not something that, you have to look at your own situation and say, is this something that I need to do, or is this something that, it's never been a problem in the past and it may not be a problem in the future. But in my world, dealing with a service that everyone has an opinion about, okay, it's important for me to do this, and it may be for you as well. Again, the mentor maven. What is the maven going to say when you tell him that we're working together? My father was the ultimate maven. And I love my dad, but he, anytime I had something that I was working on, it could be a new condo I was going to buy, it could be a new idea that I had. For every reason I had to do it, he'd have 10 reasons not to. And it wasn't because he was a bad guy. It's because he cared about his son. He wanted to protect his son. Okay? But if the person that was my salesperson didn't protect against my father, chances are they lost the opportunity. So wrapping up, you want to remember to be able to do the 1 to 10, follow that 1 to 10. I believe I have that on my website. I believe that it's something not on my website, on my YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and type in Sales Results Inc. as one word, I believe that 1 to 10 technique is one of the videos on my website. I'll double check it as soon as I get off of this webinar, but I believe that it is, okay? And that will help you kind of, if you watch it over and over, you can kind of get the feeling for it. Recognize that the information you gather from prospects helps you to better prepare the presentation, really critical. Don't write the presentation yourself. To Ben's point and to my point, have them write the presentation for you by telling you specifically what they need to see, hear, or experience. Be able to use a collaborative negotiation, prior to really partner with the prospect. Don't try to negotiate at a competitive level. It ends up becoming a lose-lose. I negotiated with a person that did a remodel on my home, cut their margin by $20,000, and the project that was supposed to take 3 months took 9 months. So they lost their margin, I lost the service, both of us lost. Not good. And use the clincher to ensure that you're going to get the close and keep the close. Okay? At this time, we have about 5 minutes left. I'd like to take some questions. You can either, again, throw them in the chat or *6 and ask a question. And let's just take maybe a couple minutes on that, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Questions. Everybody's perfect at presentation. Come on. I don't think so. Any questions? Just hit *6. Okay. Question. No questions? Somebody hit *6. Okay. If there are no questions, then we're going to wrap up. If you would please, check our blog out. Certainly one thing I'd love is a favor to me, a personal favor to me, is if you got value out of our time on this webinar, would be to go to our sales results on LinkedIn. Go to our company page on LinkedIn and just write a nice recommendation for the webinar. I would really appreciate that. Certainly you can follow us on Twitter and Facebook, and that is about it. If you have interest in talking further with me, feel free to shoot me an email, and I'm happy to talk with you. Otherwise, have a great day. Hopefully you got some good takeaways, and enjoy the rest of the week. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Steve.
You got it. My pleasure.